Ladies and gentlemen, this is TVP World. You're watching World News. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and these are the latest headlines. Top diplomats are meeting behind closed doors in Malta as the second day of the 31st OSCE Ministerial Council meeting is underway. Our chief political correspondent, Aaron Diamond, is on the scene and joins us now. Aaron, so what's the latest from the ground?
Well, Ben, there were political fireworks on Thursday when Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, came to town, and he accused the West of provoking a direct conflict with Russia. And then US Secretary of State Antony Blinken hit back, saying that his, quote, Russian colleague was very adept at drowning listeners in a tsunami of misinformation. I can tell you, Ben, today is much more reserved. Delegates are meeting face-to-face. We've been walking the corridors trying to find them, but so many are behind closed doors, and our team in fact managed to get some exclusive footage from outside one of those meeting rooms just by walking the halls and seeing what is happening around the venue here at this 31st OSCE Ministerial Council meeting. So the mood is very different from yesterday when Polish Foreign Minister Zurab Jah-pah-ree-dzeh, he walked out, of course, of Mr. Lavrov's address, and then later in an exclusive interview with TVP World told us that Russia should be suspended from the OSCE and UN Security Council. We're told Minister Jah-pah-ree-dzeh will have a number of bilateral meetings, or is expected to, this afternoon, and this is where the pointy end of the forum takes place. Decisions are made, things are signed off, and then a press conference takes place this afternoon as well. But as we know, here at the OSCE, consensus is everything. All 57 member states have to agree, including the likes of Russia and Belarus. And so what exactly is agreed on, what exactly is confirmed, and how exactly that is put in a final communique, that all very much remains to be seen.
Right, so will the tension be building or will it simmer down? We'll have to see as you bring us more updates. But meanwhile, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Now, excluding Russia from the OSCE may not be a realistic proposal, according to Artur Koldomasov of the Global Governance Institute. He notes that the organization was originally designed with the Soviet Union in mind and argues that there are no viable alternatives for addressing security in the region.
This is the organization that has been created with the Soviet Union in mind. And this is the forum that also has been created to actually unite Central Asian countries with Russia, the United States, Canada, and other European states under one umbrella. And there's no alternative for that currently at that moment except of the UN, which is not that purposeful in the context of the security issues in that thing. So we really need to remember how realistic that decision might be, and also what is actually the concept behind the organization.
Moscow has announced the closure of the Polish consulate in St. Petersburg effectively early 2025. The decision is seen as a retaliatory move following Poland's closure of the Russian consulate in Poznan last month. Quote, Russia had no right to make this decision, stated Polish Foreign Minister Artur Koldomasov during the 31st OSCE ministerial meeting in Malta.
According to the Russian Foreign Ministry, the Polish consulate in St. Petersburg will close on January 10, 2025.
In accordance with the principle of reciprocity, 3 diplomatic employees of the Consulate General of Poland in St. Petersburg have been declared persona non grata and must leave the territory of Russia by the specified date.
Russia didn't really have the right for this to this retaliation.
This move comes in response to Poland closing down a Russian consulate in Poznan last week.
I took the decision to close down the Russian consulate in Poznan as a sign of our displeasure and outrage at the Russian campaign of arsons in Poland and beyond.
The Polish Foreign Ministry has previously limited the areas of Poland where Russian diplomats are allowed to travel. Sikorski called the decision to close the Poznan consulate down a warning.
We know what you're doing. We have proof that you're doing it. stop doing it, and if you don't, we'll take further action.
Sikorski has a precise idea of what that might be.
And if acts of diversion and terrorism continue, I will close down the rest of Russian consular presence in Poland.
For now, it remains unclear whether Poland will take any action in response to the closure of the St. Petersburg consulate.
Today, Ukraine marks the Day of the Armed Forces, a solemn occasion to honor the courage and sacrifice of its military personnel. President Volodymyr Zelensky led the tributes commemorating Ukrainians who gave their lives for their country. Our correspondent is in Kyiv, Oz Katerji. Oz, can you give us the latest on the ground?
Well, Friday saw the day that Ukrainians mark Armed Forces Day in Ukraine, and President Zelensky held a ceremony by the Motherland Monument in Kyiv, where he gave tribute to many of the Ukrainian soldiers who have lost their lives defending Ukraine. But he also made an interesting parallel between Thursday, December the 5th, and Friday, December the 6th. Well, Thursday, December the 5th, marked 30 years since the Budapest Memorandum was signed. Now, the Budapest Memorandum was Ukraine giving up its nuclear weapons in exchange for security guarantees from the West, that if it gave up its nuclear weapons, the West would come to its aid if it was ever attacked. Now, obviously, that did not happen. And the parallel that Zelensky chose to draw between these 2 days is quite interesting, particularly given the political climate we're heading into. Almost as if Zelensky was saying to his people, we need to be able to stand alone. Now, he said it's been 30 years since the Budapest Memorandum was signed. Today, we clearly understand that the true and most effective and most reliable guarantor of our security is the AFU, the Armed Forces of Ukraine. May death avoid the brave. So really stark words there from Zelensky, almost preparing the Ukrainian people for a future in which they may have to stand alone, and their only support, their only defense will come from the Armed Forces of Ukraine. So this is a poignant day for the Ukrainians. It's not just another day, one that is on the minds of everyone who has lost loved ones defending their country as they look forward to next year for what looks to be another difficult war of the year to come. Back to you in the studio.
All right, remarkable day indeed. Thank you so much for the update, Oz. And meanwhile, please stay safe. Appreciate it. The United States has announced an additional $4 billion in foreign military financing for Poland. Over the last 2 years, loans and guarantees from the U.S. to Poland have totaled $11 billion. The funding aims to accelerate Poland's military modernization, enhancing its defense capabilities and strengthening NATO's eastern flank. In an announcement, the U.S. Department of State described Poland as a cornerstone of NATO's eastern flank and a vital strategic partner. Recent acquisitions by Poland included Apache helicopters, airspace and surface radar reconnaissance systems, high-mobility artillery rocket systems, and Patriot air and missile defense systems. Poland's defense minister confirmed the loan in a statement on X. New U.S. sanctions on Russia's Gazprombank have led Moscow to ease payment rules for Russian oil and gas transactions. Gazprombank, partially owned by state energy giant Gazprom, was previously required to handle payments for fossil fuel exports. However, in a decree published on Thursday, President Vladimir Putin scrapped this requirement. The decision comes in response to U.S. sanctions imposed last month aimed at cutting off revenues fueling the Kremlin war efforts. Meanwhile, Hungary, reliant on Russia over half of its natural gas, has asked Washington to exempt Gazprombank from sanctions related to gas payments, arguing that the measures could harm some American allies. Protests continue in Georgia, with demonstrators accusing the government of being illegitimate. Under the leadership of Georgian Dream Prime Minister Artur Koldomasov, Tbilisi recently announced the suspension of Georgia's EU accession process until 2028.
Georgia is fighting to re-establish its EU accession process, and a leading Georgian pro-democracy campaigner is certain about the significance of the current protests.
We don't expect that it's going to be an easy fight, but as I said, we don't have any other choice. Either we win now or this country becomes Belarus.
A prominent opposition figure also had positive things to say about the effects of the demonstrations, as he called on the people to remain active on the streets.
We are at the beginning of the road, but we see first cracks of resignations, quite massive resignations of public servants, including in law enforcement.
Apart from protesting in the streets, the Georgians also have other plans.
To work with our Western colleagues in US, but also in EU, not to recognize them as a legitimate government. So this is our plan now.
And they are certain about the reasons behind the current crisis.
This government should be treated as a proxy of Russia, enemy of the free world.
The Georgian president has also called on the prime minister to resign.
As soon as this prime minister steps down, I will call fresh elections in 2 weeks' time.
The Georgian opposition, along with the protesters, seems to have a set plan for getting Georgia back on the European track.
The leader of South Korea's ruling party has called for the suspension of President Yoon Suk-yeol's constitutional powers following his introduction of martial law earlier this week. South Korean prosecutors, in collaboration with the military, are set to investigate Yoon's emergency declaration. The move has sparked widespread protests demanding his resignation, while opposition politicians are advocating for impeachment proceedings. The ruling party's leader's shift in stance increases the likelihood of impeachment. On Tuesday, Yoon granted the military extensive powers to address what he described as an anti-state forces. However, he rescinded the declaration 6 hours later after the parliament voted to oppose it. And with that, we conclude this edition of World News. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.